So, I've recently been replaying Shadow Generations for research purposes concerning a future video that we'll get to later down the line. And one thing that really struck me upon revisit is the game's soundtrack, and just how middling a lot of it is.
I was not expecting that.
Now, that's not to say any of this is bad music. In fact, far from it. All of the main level themes here are certainly worth a good head bop at the very least. It's just that none of them really go much further than that. There's nothing here that I enjoy on any deeper level. These tracks are simply trying to act as energetic level backing, with not a lot more being attempted. As a result, they also tend to sound a little samey to me. There's absolutely distinction between each track, of course, I can tell them apart, but since they're all functioning with the same intention and going for the same sort of vibe, they tend to meld together in my mind a little bit. Overall, it leaves the Shadow Generation soundtrack feeling a touch underwhelming, to me personally at least. There's nothing here that I really dislike, but there's not a whole lot that's left any lasting impression. However, there are a few that have. Because this video is titled the way it is for a reason. For every track that I might have felt rather indifferent towards, there's another one that got me, that I absolutely loved. Shadow Generations ain't a faultless game by any means, but when it hits hard. This game carries with it some damn high highs, and that statement thoroughly applies to its soundtrack as well. For my existing audience, you might be starting to see what's going on here. This'll essentially be like that musical stretch of my Murder Of video from last year, but making up the entirety of the project this time around. Today, I'd like to shed some light on, and ironically enough, sing the praises of a select few songs from Shadow Generation, spotlighting some greats, further commending some highly regarded favourites, and hopefully introducing you to one or two hidden gems. So, take a seat, grab some, I don't know, earphones I guess? Because this is the music of Shadow Generations. No, wait, fuck, that's what Pasquale'll call his video too. I need a new fucking title. While I don't have too much to say about the Act 1 themes for any given level, I find a lot of the Act 2 tracks end up going in some fun and unexpected direction. Kingdom Valley, for example, slowly becomes an oddly sinister sounding tune, almost as if some unforeseen villainous force is quietly seeping into the song, which I suppose kinda fits actually, considering what this game does with Methalus. Meanwhile, Space Colony Arc, Chaos Island, and Radical Highway all go for this weird, pseudo-retro kind of approach. I don't know how else to describe it. You can almost hear the pixelization within the tunes. It's not a bad direction at all. In fact, I actually quite like it. It's just very, very interesting. And then you've got Rail Canyon, firstly containing those aggressive sounding synths that everyone's already familiar with. But then, around 2.5 minutes in, it randomly becomes all serene and reserved, only to then go kind of crazy hard, building itself up to the next big beat drop. It's just such a sudden and sharp transition into that initial serenity too. I kind of love this. While on the topic of the level theme, I would just like to mention their preview music. You know, the stuff that plays when you're at the entrance to a level. These are interesting because A, they are heavy. These are much weightier renditions of the tracks found within. And B, because that heaviness doesn't exist in base generations. All of the preview music in that game sounds rather pepper and upbeat, almost trying to excite you at the thought of re-entering another memory. That's directly contrasted here. This music doesn't exactly sound happy to see you. Not only is that an obvious reflection of the darker personality taking the reins of this particular narrative, but it also feels reflective of the world that narrative takes place in. The white space we explore throughout Shadow Generations feels significantly more characterful than it ever did in the original game. There seems to be a lot more thought put into the set dressing and environmental storytelling this time around. Places like the underground labyrinth built solely to keep Mephiles at bay grant this space that, ironically, is meant to be devoid of any discernible personality, quite a lot of one. And, as such, the sheer heaviness present in the level preview tracks, to me, almost reads like white space itself struggling under the weight of trying to hold time together, letting out groans and grunts at the strain of trying to contain all these misplaced pieces of timeline. Now, maybe that's me reading way too far into things, Musings. It's certainly a possibility. But I quite like this idea regardless. Unintentional or not, I think it's a very fun piece of headcanon. Here, take a listen. Why don't you be the judge? And then, of course, you've got Radical Highways level preview music that just sounds like the gates to hell itself are opening. I'll tell you one track that I'm particularly fond of. The music that plays during the various Doom Power introductions. Within the context of the story, these are nothing but bad news. Dark enhancers bestowed upon Shadow by Black Doom, designed only to further mold him into a dangerous Black Arms weapon. However, for us, the players, they're pretty fun new abilities that we actually quite like playing around with. It can be very easy to forget the utter dread these upgrades are meant to bring about within the narrative, so the music steps in with each new ability obtained to remind us that these powers are anything but good. On the topic of Doom, I would just like to highlight the cutscene where he speaks to Gerald and Maria. I know this is probably taken from Shadow 05 and is meant as a loving reference to that game, but in the midst of all this seriousness about Shadow turning darker and being taken over, I just could not help but laugh at Black Doom's entrance. This foreboding, imposing menace showing up and being backed by the kind of stinger that sounds like it belongs in an overly camp theatrical performance. While we're on lighter subject matter, I want to turn your attention to the cutscene between Sonic and Shadow because there's a pretty fun detail hidden in there. During the majority of the fight, we hear a very lightly edited version of 4 True Story from Generations, but when the two first meet, the music playing is Generation City Escape cover. The aforementioned fun detail here coming from the fact that all those months earlier, this exact version used in this cutscene is what they played during our very first look at this very game. Also, quick shout out to the music used in the Shadow portion of that announcement trailer. It's just some pre-made track that they licensed out, but it slaps pretty damn hard. I found a lot of the cutscene music here pretty underwhelming. A majority of it just straight up lifted from previous games. And that's such a disappointment because, the hot take I suppose, Sonic cutscene music tends to be pretty fucking good. I don't ever see this coming up in discussion, but yeah, there's some powerful tunes found throughout this franchise's cutscenes. At Reflection, Conquest, You Are My Companion, purification of souls, and that list sure does go on. Why does nobody ever talk about this stuff? Point being, the track Never Forgotten is the closest this game's cutscenes get to that usual standard, in my humble opinion. It becomes very emotional towards the end, and understandably so considering the context. If the writing building up to this moment had been a tad bit stronger, then there's a good chance you might have wrung some tears out of me. This music is not bad at all. On the topic of more emotive pieces, I've gotta take a moment to shout out the Collection Rooms theme. Such a calm, introspective little lo-fi piece. Absolutely perfect for the environment it's found in. Nostalgia, sadness, serenity, fear, and everything in between, all mixed together beautifully in this one track. I remember first hearing it during Dark Beginnings credits and doing a bit of a double take. The term quality here is one hell of an understatement. And then, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the Doom Zone variation of White Space is incredibly menacing, creating a real damn sense of foreboding. It's not quite the loud, chaotic burst of destruction you'd be expecting to hear with a title like that. It knows its placement in this game is to lead up to the big finale. As a result, the track carries this heavy feeling of reservation, as though it's holding back, not playing its full hand, greeting you with the musical equivalent of a nasty grin, knowingly sitting back while it teases the true horrors that await. 10 out of 10, I'd say, does its job of telling you
We're in the endgame now.
in the best way possible. And speaking of horrors, it's an overused Snapcube joke. I love the Mephiles boss battle. It's my favourite in the game. Lacking a bit in actual, well, gameplay, but it's just such a spectacle, packing so much visual flair into such a short amount of time. Not to mention the amazing little self-contained story it presents for Mephiles himself. This idea of him lurking out there somewhere, in a space outside of time, desperately clawing at his chance to properly exist again. That's fucking awesome. Could he have not been the main villain of this story instead, please? And the music backing that struggle of his is simply wonderful. Intense, aggressive, dire. It's as though Mephiles' own desperation is bleeding into the very soundtrack we're listening to. I want to exist! And on the topic of Mephiles, oh boy, now we're starting to get to the real good stuff. Deep within the bowels of white space lies a zone, a labyrinth, a prison, you might say. While it's never outright confirmed, the implication is that some greater, unknowable force in the Sonic universe has built this entire construct purely to keep Mephiles from ever returning to the timeline, sealing him on a level below time and space itself. And when you enter this prison, the tune you're met with is the most amazingly cartoon kind of creepy that I have ever heard. Seriously, this thing's incredible. It carries all that unease and paranoia that you'd hope to hear, while still managing a genuinely pleasant melody. There are these violins or strings or something, I'm not very knowledgeable in music honestly, that go on for just a bit too long, creating this wonderful sense of things being ever so slightly off. There are also these rattles and thuds heard throughout the track, as though the music itself is becoming more and more unstable, struggling to contain Mephiles as he desperately tries to break free. I love this theme. It simply hasn't left my mind since the game first released. Absolutely amazing work. However, nothing I've spoken about in this video thus far quite compares to what Shadow Generations does with All Hail Shadow. Beginning as a celebratory credits tune for one of the most morally pure story paths in the game, All Hail Shadow debuted in the Dark Hedgehog's 2005 solo outing, and would go on to become something of a main theme for the character moving forward. It popped up in TSR, Black Knight, 06, and even Forces. The latter two examples both paired with him roundhouse kicking a hedgehog in the face for some reason, and has since become a rather usual and expected part of Shadow's overall presentation. It's gotten to the point now where all you need to play are those opening few seconds and fans will start grinning from ear to ear, knowing exactly what's coming.
We've never tried this before. You guys okay with that? I think you might know this one too. Just a guess.
All that context in mind, it was rather unsurprising hearing the song return once more for Shadow Generations. However, the way it's implemented here is smart, it's clever, dare I say, it borders on genius. Shadow Generations actually kind of weaponizes the song's deep-rooted association with the titular hedgehog, shifting and morphing the track right alongside him as he undergoes his character arc. For example, throughout a majority of your time in white space, Shadow's descending. He's getting worse. Black Doom's mind games and the vile influence of the Doom powers are slowly turning him into a darker and darker version of himself. Well, at least that's what's meant to be happening. The story kind of sucks at properly communicating that journey, but that's a discussion for another video. The point being, Shadow's getting worse. And to complement this, the White Space Hub music is, well, it's fucking amazing, actually. This deeply melancholic, almost haunting kind of track, whispering out the darkness of the past and carrying such a sense of despair. It's already a powerful composition in its own right, but then, just when you think it can't get any better, you start hearing something woven in there. All Hail Shadow isn't just referenced, it isn't just integrated into the track, it is the track. Everything Shadow's worked so hard to overcome, all the pain and anguish of his past, has been brought right back up against him, throwing him into complete turmoil. And so this song, that once symbolized Shadow's certainty in moving forward and putting the past behind him, is disturbed and upset, contorting and twisting into chaos, confusion and despair, right alongside him. It's beautiful, I think. This track has become one of my new favourites across the entire franchise. It takes all the best elements of Frontier's more emotive, open zone music, and ties them into Shadow's story in an intricate, powerful way. Hats off to whoever thought up this idea. I personally think it's amazing. Of course, that's not where the brilliance ends, because as Shadow completes his arc, regaining control of himself and more so than ever deciding who and what he truly is, All Hail Shadow just keeps on evolving right alongside him. As Shadow enters that final portal, facing down Black Doom with determination in his eyes, we get perhaps the most confident and heroic rendition of All Hail Shadow we've ever heard. Ah, man. What a great way to cap off the game. Though I'm personally a little let down that the lyrics here are just reused from the original, almost 20-year-old recording. After Frontiers, I figured you would have gotten Kellen Quinn to do a cover. It couldn't even get Crush 40 to re-record the lyrics, but that aside, the instrumentation behind those lyrics is amazing. Climactic, powerful, practically beaming with determination. It gets borderline angelic at certain points, and with a hint of genuine, unburdened optimism sprinkled in there occasionally, which is hell of a statement to make regarding Shadow's current resolve. And then, to round everything off, we get the final cutscene confrontation with Black Doom. As Doom, in his Neo-Devil form, momentarily gains the upper hand, and Shadow's fate is drawn into question. But not really, we know he's not gonna die, come on. The Doom Zone music briefly takes center stage once again, really hammering home the danger and dread of the moment. Of course, Shadow almost immediately and rather effortlessly breaks free, now more than ready to permanently put Black Doom to sleep. And, as such, the music he's backed with is this. The most pumped up, energetic, grandiose version of All Hail Shadow in existence. There's no longer any questions regarding Shadow's morality. He knows what he wants to be. He's at peace. He has everything he needs within him. You could say he is all of himself. So yeah, the game's alright. Shadow Generations doesn't feature my favourite soundtrack in all of Sonic, but it does carry a lot of high points. While I found most of the more energetic music didn't do too much for me this time around, the more cinematic, emotional stuff really hit where it counted. In that incredibly niche regard, Sonic's kind of been on a roll lately. I mean, this, Murder of and Frontiers, Not You back to back, that's nothing to scoff at. I'm personally more than satisfied with this series' musical offerings at the moment, and I cannot wait to hear what they might do when scoring any future story content. So, thank you for watching. Feel free to share any of your musical musings on this game, since this particular art form is such a personal, subjective one. And last but not least, please go watch the new Wallace and Gromit movie. That has nothing to do with the video, it was just really, really good, and more people need to see it. The video's out. The video's done. The video is out to all of you. That's nice. Yeah, this thing was supposed to be out in January. Yeah, I was not intending that little crosswords thing I did with my friend to be my first video of the year. It was supposed to be this one. This was meant to be out like 2 months ago now. So I'm very glad that worked out as planned. But hey, it is out, so that's good. And a big massive thank you to all of you for watching it, and for watching it all the way through and getting to this point. You know, it means a lot. I say that every video, but it is true. I really have a lot of fun doing this. I have a lot of fun making this stuff, and I think I'm slowly but surely increasing my skills and capabilities with every video. So it's nice that more and more people are jumping along for the ride and enjoying those. Yeah. As always, I definitely have plans to make more stuff in the future. But I am going to give no specifics, because every single time I say something like this, the universe finds a way of fucking me over, and delaying me for ages. So I'm not gonna say anything more, any of my plans, anything other than I definitely do intend to create more stuff, to create a lot more stuff. That will be coming to this channel at some point in the future. If you're one of the poor bastards who's still on Twitter, I am too. I have one. Here it is. Feel free to follow. And I also have a Blue Sky, though I don't really post on it much. It is more for replying to friends, but I do have a Blue Sky. If that's your preference, I am on there. Yeah. And right here is where I would plug a Patreon page, but funny story, I must have been too inactive on there, because turns out they fucking deactivated the thing. recently for like inactivity on my part, which is just a little bit funny. But that's okay, because I was gonna revamp my Patreon anyway and look into setting up like YouTube membership stuff. So keep on the lookout for information regarding that soonish, hopefully. But I think that's everything I needed to say. A bit shorter of an outro this time, hopefully. Again, thank you for watching my video. I hope you had a good time. I hope you got, like, sucked into the atmosphere of the music or whatever. And I am going to, end the video now. Bye-bye.